6 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. PL Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Select Board and Finance Committee will be conducted both in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person. For those who wish to do so, they may attend remotely. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C 38, Section 20F, to notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of the meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. This meeting is being recorded by the town of Barrington and by the Berkshire Edge and other members of the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items, those reasonably anticipated by the chair, may be discussed in the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Since we have some members of both boards participating remotely, we'll have a roll call attendance. The Select Board, Garfield Reed. Here. Eric Gabriel. Here. Ed Abrams.
Here.
Lee Davis.
Here.
And I am President Steve Bannon. Bill, your turn.
Yes, on the Finance Committee, Milena,
Here.
Madonna,
Here.
Ann,
Here.
Richard,
Here.
and Philip Ornstein. I'm here remotely.
So those of you who are looking at the agenda, I'm going to move things around a little bit. There are three groups that are here, or people who are here in person, and I will take them first. So let's start with section 6, page 23, Veterans Affairs. Andy Morrow is here in person. Mark, you want to go over it briefly?
Really not much to highlight here. It's a reduction of 6% based on veteran benefits for this year. And nothing has any questions. Any of the 4 lines.
And Andy, I'm sure the reason you're here is Mark's recommendation on the American Legion police, as your request is to go from 18,000 to 23,000.
That's correct. Basically, I'm Vice Commander of the American Legion, and I'm representing Mike Casey, who's the commander of the VFW tonight. He's out of town. Before we even start, we'd like to thank you for all the support you've given us over the last couple of years. We've invested your money well. We've turned around and we've painted the outside and replaced a lot of the clapboards on the old building. Not old, but this is getting old. And we've had the whole interior painted, done over all the hardwood floors. And now we're working on downstairs in the basement. And as some of you in this room understand, we're working on the electrical down there also. But we've also dawned on us that our heating system is over 31 years old. And who knows what that'll really cost. So that's one of the reasons I'm here this evening, to start to put some money ahead for future capital improvements. But also before the vote, we'd like to invite all of you up at one time. Just come on up and see all at once. We don't care. Not on Memorial Day, a little busy on Memorial Day, but any other day, contact myself or Mike Casey. We'd be happy to show you around the building. Any other questions for me about the money?
I guess, could I just ask clarification? So the extra money here is to sort of put some money aside for future heating system?
No, we're investing in it already,
Okay,
but
okay.
we're starting to realize we're gonna have to put a new heating system and air conditioning in there. And that's gonna be quite a good price. Plus, we're working on a lot of electrical up there also at the same time.
So eventually, would that be a capital expense then?
Well, no, the money you give us we split that money we're requesting, $5,000. We split that between the American Legion and the Post and Post Home and the VFW. And what that does is, we try to pay the bills, and that's becoming more and more difficult. We got an old heating oil system in there now. We're looking to go propane. In my business, not anymore though. But we're looking for, more efficient propane, get that oil tank out of the basement. And now I'm not sure if we're gonna go above ground or underground for a propane tank. And hopefully to take care of that building for the future.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I just have it's really more of an accounting question, maybe for Allison. We receive about $61,500 in state aid for veterans benefits. My question is, that number, are we using those monies here, or are they being used for something else?
That for me,
No, that's for Allison.
No, it's really more for Allison and perhaps Mark, and if you want to follow up and get back to me, that's okay too.
Okay, we'll follow up and get back to you on that.
It's I'm looking at tab 3, page 2. And it's the state summary, and it talks about veterans benefits of $61,500. So I just sort of wanted to see where that fit into our budget.
Okay, they'll get back to you.
All right,
And
thanks.
And I have a question on that. I'm not entirely clear as what's included in benefits and why the number is fluctuating so much.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to speak up a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's
That's
a
really
Mark
for
and
Mark.
Ally
That's a question
No,
for Mark. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not sure who it's.
Yeah, no, I get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I should have been more clear when I mentioned that I was suggesting here in the town manager recommended line, a reduction in benefits. That's not. It's only because of year-end actuals from the prior fiscal year, and it's based on requests and not proposing cuts in any benefits to veterans. But to be honest with you, I don't know what those benefits are. I'd have to ask Lori, our veterans agent.
I think I might be able to answer. I'm your representative on the town for the Veterans Organization in Great Barrington here. Lori Hill is retiring this year after a number of years. And a lot of those benefits are her salary and benefits we pay out to veterans in the area. I think it's chapter 150 something, and it has to do with disabled vets, and it has to do with veterans, wives of veterans that passed away and stuff. So I think that has a lot, but I think Lori's benefits are in there also. Your share of the, I think 13 towns, which Barrington's the highest, because we're the most. And so I'm there, and I'm also Great Barrington's grade officer, so we try to do all that for you. And some of the money that we comes to our post and the VFW post also is to take care of veterans' needs. We have a lot of veterans that are getting, I'm on my 3rd back surgery, so that's why I'm here today. I'm nuts. But we have a lot of veterans that are very sick. We try to, anytime we find out a veteran's in the hospital, we turn around, make sure that somebody gets money there. If somebody's help, we try to get money to help people with mileage or other things like that. I know you got a big night tonight.
No, it's okay.
But that we're helping our veterans in the area and doing the best we can right now. And we are going to be advertising shortly for a new veterans officer.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Andy.
Okay, I thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will do the Berkshire Hills Regional School Assessment. So Peter Dillon and Sharon Harrison here, one up to the table.
Okay, so thanks for letting us go. Typically, we check in with all the finance and select boards of the 3-member towns to respond to questions, to tell you where we're at, and ultimately to hope for your recommendation on on the warrant article. I think the voters listened to what these two boards have to say. This year for everybody is a tough year, particularly in the context of where we're at with inflation right now. Many of you participated in our budget presentations, either the whole school committee one or the ones that were targeted to finance and select boards. From a school district perspective, the first year of the governor's term is a little unusual. So they have a little more time to present their budget. So our initial budget was based on some really complex projections that Sharon did. And then we got the governor's budget and we were remarkably close. Which is great, because it's really hard to figure that out. The overall impact of the increase of the net assessment to the member towns is 6.4%, or $652,071. We've spoken about this before, and I'm happy to talk about it more if you want. Each town's investment in education is tied to the number of students in that town as a share of the total number of district students. So again, for us, it's Great Barrington, Stockbridge, and West Stockbridge, and it's also tied to the minimum local contribution. The total number of students within the district residents is 918 students, and Great Barrington's share of that is 686. And that plus the minimum local contribution drives the percentage share of each of the three towns. Though the overall increase is 6.4%. Great Barrington's is up 7.32%, and Stockbridge and West Stockbridge are both up in the high threes, almost 4%. And so, Anne or other people would, why is that happening?
No, I guess I'm just surprised because in the packet we
It
have.
was, it's a different percentage, yeah. 5.24,
So realize that when this book is done, it's early on in the process. And it's before the governor's budget is out, and it's before the school committee. The school committee still hasn't voted on this. There will be some changes. So.
Is there something we should be or can be looking at?
Yeah, I have
Do
an
you have
addendum.
something, Sharon, hand us?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So this number here. we should-
It is just a placeholder.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the big driving things, and Sharon can speak to this in more explicit detail, is the minimum local contribution is tied to the relative wealth of a community. And then the other one is the number of students as a percentage. Right, so the upside is Great Barrington continues to have lots of students. The downside is Great Barrington has a lot of students. So we passed out two things, we just passed out one. So we passed out the assessment sheet, so it looks like this. And the first page is the operating and capital budget. The second page is the operating budget. And then the third page is the capital budget. So and they sort of in an interesting way balance each other off. The operating budget's going up, the capital budget's going down. That's tied to retiring the existing debt on what we have called the new buildings, but now they're not so new. They're just the elementary and middle school. So that investment is just about done. Sharon, do you want to add anything? Are there any questions?
I have a question,
Go ahead.
and I know there's a lot of going on, and I won't be like, bothering you with all the details. Lots of many things may change, obviously. But I'm just kind of curious. One thing that surprised me when we saw the numbers for students who actually opt to go to a school outside Great Barrington.
Yes.
And the cost is frankly astronomical.
Right.
It's 70,000 per student, including transportation. And I just wonder, like, what, you know, in a bigger picture, do you guys have any plans how to deal with that, or, you know, what are our thoughts about
Yeah,
it going forward? Yeah.
what I believe you're talking about
Yeah.
here, and this is really interesting how this happens, but if a student in any community wants to go to a vocational school, and in this case, there are a handful of students going to Taconic.
Iconic, yes.
Taconic's a vocational program, and there are different mechanisms to how money moves around tied to young people.
Mhm.
All right, so the simplest one is school choice, and if we accept a student from Sheffield, we get $5,000.
Right, right. Yeah.
The next one, sort of up in the pecking order, could be a virtual school. So there are a couple of virtual schools across the state, and somebody can sign up for that. And then the charge to the sending, in this case, district is like $10,000. We get students from Richmond because they end in 8th grade, and we get students from Otis and Sandusfield because they end in 6th grade. And that's between like $10,000 and $11,000.
Okay.
And then like the jackpot is the vocational
School,
program,
yeah.
right? So the state set a higher reimbursement rate, and what's interesting is they don't charge the sending district, but they actually charge the sending community. So every year at the town meeting, there are typically there are 3 warrant articles connected to the schools, but in reality, only 2 of them are really the schools issue. One is the operating budget, one is the capital budget, and then the third one is this special assessment tied to the vocational students. So all that to say, we're deep in the process of trying to build a new high school, and we'll come
Right,
back
yeah,
and about that tons. But the gold standard that Taconic has are these Chapter 74 vocational programs. Right now, we have 2 of those programs. So we've got automotive and horticulture, and we're trying to expand this year our early childhood program to also be that. When students come to us going forward,
Right.
we can charge those communities the same amount, or maybe even a little more than Taconic's charging the town of Great Barrington. So the relatively short-term answer is, as we offer more and more high-quality vocational programs, right? And we think next year we'll have 3,
Okay.
and ultimately we'll have 6. Students won't choose to travel to Taconic.
Yeah.
They'll
Okay.
stay here.
Okay.
And there's a real imbalance because we have about 50 vocational students at Monument. Taconic has something on the range of 400.
Yeah.
And then the other vocational center is McCann Tech, which is like the platinum standard for vocational education, and they have many more. So we'll solve it by building high
Building
quality
more, yeah, okay.
programs, and students will vote with their feet.
Right, right, yeah.
And then there's a strong possibility we won't just serve our own students, but we'll serve vocational students from the 5 towns south of us and the 3 or 4 towns east of us, and maybe to a degree from Richmond, Lenox, and Lee as well.
Okay, thank you.
Can I follow up on that? And if my understanding is we pay transportation and tuition for the vocational program, but the tuition we pay for the vocational program is actually more than we get from school
Yes.
choice when students' choice.
Yeah, that's what I was explaining.
Which makes
Usually.
no sense whatsoever.
It's totally, and I've argued this and people like laugh at me at the state level, but it's totally a function of the time when the agreement was reached.
Yeah.
So school choice was around 93, charter schools were a little later, vocational schools, the rationale was they're highly specialized facilities and materials that they use to do that work. So it should cost more. The reason the school choice number doesn't change is because in most districts, the number of students that come in and go out is the same. right? And in our district, we get about 3 times as many choice kids that come in than go out. So from a political perspective, it's a terrible hot potato for the politicians because they don't just represent our district, but they but represent everybody. And if Great Barrington or our 3 towns were to win, then the 5 towns south of us would to lose terribly. So there's a disincentive for elected officials to address it. I bring it up all the time.
And is it pretty much governed by the state? I mean,
It's entirely
entirely governed by
the
the
state.
state.
So we have latitude over our tuition agreements and like the last ones with Farmington River and Richmond, I think were both 5-year agreements and they both went up 4% a year for 5 years, right? So compound more than 20%.
Right.
It's moving in the right direction, but the choice thing is frustrating. And I talked to Phil about this the other day, and it's not the best metaphor, and I need to figure out another one. But if we're paying the basic cost to fly the plane and we have empty seats, it's better to fill the empty seats than to not fill them. But if we take that one more student, so we have to fly another plane,
It's very expensive.
then we're making a big mistake, right? So we're really careful about it and try to balance it. There was an article in today's paper about Lennox, and I think they're taking 40% choice, and it's a very high number. Yeah.
Do we work with the private schools? You know, if we have a vocational program that they want to take advantage of, does that ever come into play or? Is that
No, not so much. The connection, so within our catchment, there's the Waldorf School, the high school in Stockbridge. There's BCD in Stockbridge. There's the Waldorf School, the former Steiner School in Great Barrington. We provide a lot of mandatory federally funded services like speech and reading and things like that. And we recently voted to let the Waldorf kids participate in football. We can only do it in sports that are under enrolled, so there's some collaboration, but we've not done it yet around vocational ed.
That's not like an opportunity. I mean, this is a bigger discussion. That's not any kind of opportunity if we start having programs, vocational programs that they want to participate in.
It might be,
Yeah.
but it also may, it might just draw them to our schools.
Yeah,
Right.
but some of them kind of want to take advantage of one program, you know, for.
Yeah, I gotta research it a little
Yeah,
bit.
it was
It
kind
might
of.
be. I think the biggest challenge would be around scheduling.
Yeah,
So if you're in an automotive sequence or if you're in a horticulture sequence, you need big chunks of time to do that work. And with travel and other things, that might be.
yeah, because I was aware of the football program, so I was thinking maybe they were moving into more of a.
Yeah.
So Peter, I guess you thought that I was asking about why we have 7.3% increase and the other towns are at 3.7, 3.9. So I am asking, is that just because the number of children, of eligible children in the town?
Yeah, so from Great Barrington, of the total 918 district students, Great Barrington has 686, Stockbridge has 124, and West Stockbridge has 108. So if you go back and then look at Stockbridge's increase, West Stockbridge's increase, it's the lowest in part because their percentage of the total number of students went down. And you can look at this as a really interesting state report about the equalized value of each community. You can click on all these boxes and see it as visual representations. But every community's assessed value went up, but Great Barrington and Stockbridge's went up more than West Stockbridge.
But so you have the breakdown of students by town for projected for the coming year? What was do you have the breakdown? So I'm just assuming that the percentage of students for Great Barrington is much higher for the coming budget year than the previous year.
Yes, sorry.
It's
No, it's 74.48.
Yeah,
And Stockbridge's is 13 and West Stockbridge's is 12. So often Stockbridge and West Stockbridge are almost parallel.
I think I'm struggling with the percentage increase, not the fact that everybody's is going up, everybody's assessment is going up. But I'm assuming that we, 74.48% is higher than last year's
Correct.
percentage. Right, what was last year's percentage?
By about a percentage,
By 1%?
from 73 to 74 and change.
And that's causing a double percentage increase. in
But
the assessment?
there's much more than just the number of students. That's what they're trying to explain. It's a minimum local contribution
And that's
involved in the
because
community.
assessed values have gone up, or the town.
In part because of the assessed values, and then that drives this other complex thing called the minimum local contribution, right? So if the perceived wealth of each town goes up, then the state's required investment also goes up.
So we can also read from this that the state's perceived wealth of Great Barrington has gone up considerably compared to the.
The other two
perceived
towns,
wealth of
yeah.
these other two
Right.
towns.
Right, and then remember, so the total increase to the three towns is 6.4%, right? So in some like simple way, then one could think that the increase in each of the towns would be 6.4%, but Great Barrington is going up a little more, and West Stockbridges and Stockbridges are as a share of that are going up less. But Great Barrington's in part is going up more because it represents 74% of the students, and in turn, the increase.
I don't envy you these calculations. Okay.
Peter, could you speak a little bit to some of the trends and demographics you guys are seeing? It seems that the number of students coming from Great Barrington grows at a higher rate than from the other towns. And do you have any sense for where do you guys see, 3-5 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, we look at it in all different contexts, so we look at it internally, and there's a nonprofit called NASDAQ, and they do projections for us,
Yeah.
and as a function of our sort of enrollment in general, we're seeing a slight decline,
Slight decline.
but not a huge
Okay.
decline. In terms of, a couple of things that are changing, particularly in Great Barrington, they'll have a huge impact on this, is all the housing development you are investing in,
Mhm.
right? So we know that, and as part of the building project, I just put together like a long list of all the projects, and Mark and Chris were really helpful in getting me that information.
Right, yeah.
But the more housing we build, the more likely
You have
children
more children, yeah,
are gonna be in those houses.
right.
And then conversely, there are not a ton of children in Stockbridge,
Mhm.
and the values of many of the homes in Stockbridge make it unlikely that population of young people is going to increase, and
Right.
separately, that select board and finance committee is doing a lot.
I think it's a different kind of a community, perhaps,
Yeah,
because of the
older,
percentage-
more
yeah,
retired.
the percentage
people.
of the second homeowners is more
Right.
higher there, yeah.
So we're keeping an eye on that. The other big shift we're noticing is the number of English language learners or
Mhm.
recent
Okay, yeah.
immigrants.
Mhm.
So when I started here 14 years ago, or maybe applied, the percentage was very small, and I think it's
Mhm.
quadrupled
Mhm.
since then, and that's tied to work because it's a good community, and I think sort of the historical path is a family comes and then they tell their cousins, and then they come and then they tell their friends, and it's a real asset.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, right.
Phil, go ahead and then.
Yeah, Peter, I certainly am acutely aware of the complexity of this calculation in terms of the allocation that Ann has been asking about. Just as a process point for this group, who who is the referee on that calculation that sort of certifying that all these myriad factors that you've been describing are correctly calculated? Is that the state?
I'm gonna let Sharon speak to it. I mean, we're audited 50 different ways under the sun,
Right,
and
yeah.
the state generates a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. Okay.
Most of the information comes from the Department of Revenue to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And the DOR certifies that information to DESI, and then DESI certifies their information.
So the school district doesn't do the minimum local, except this year Sharon did do it, but so she could have a placeholder in the budget, did it very well. But we are told what the minimum local is, not that we come up with it and someone audits it.
So even though it's really complex, at the end of the day, it's some simple math around percentages that drives, that we do, that then drives, existing formulas. And what's interesting is those numbers are tied to a particular moment in time, because kids are always moving in and out, and our formal date is October 1st.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And again, I have no doubt it's correct and that there are numerous people involved in the process who are very detail oriented, but just as a technical matter, you know, a lot of this, as you've described, is sort of going on behind the scenes to this group. And so we're obviously relying on all the other people to kind of get this all right.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I apologize for missing the budget presentation, so I don't want to get too much in the weeds with statistics and demographics, but I'm curious about the housing portion of this. Do you have any stats anywhere that talks about home ownership versus rentals in terms of the students' home situation, that, you know, the majority of them are in homes that the parents are renting, or that they live in?
No, I actually
That's
don't
something.
think we make that distinction.
Okay.
What we did do when we ran the report for the MSBA, the building authority, we did look at sort of all the housing projects going forward that are at different points in the pipeline. And then the state, and we're about to receive our new enrollment letter, which sets the stage for how big a high school we can build. The state put that all into some complex black box formula that I don't understand. But they look, in the short term, you can look at birth rates and birth data, right? And then the farther you go out, like if you're thinking 7 years out or 6 years out, kids are gonna hit school, we know that those kids are born, right? But if 15 years out, you can't really use that data, and it gets a little fuzzier.
Okay.
Just have one question. You mentioned about Lennox having 40% choice in, what is our percentage of people coming in?
Do you remember the top of that? It's 200 out of 12.
1,200 for the entire school system.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of us can calculate that.
That's all I needed.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry, what was that number again? Can you repeat that?
200 out of 1,200.
Thank you.
So I think we're working really hard to both like balance educational needs, be a good steward of the community's resources. This exists outside of our budget, and it's a little inflated because of some of the government grants. But we're bringing in, like, the past year, $4 million in additional grants on top of our budget. In a more typical year, it might be closer to the $2 or $2.5 million, but I can't really think of another district our size that is so entrepreneurial and successful at writing grants. And it's helping us think of like how to redesign the high school from a learning perspective. It supports our after-school programs in 3 buildings. It supports stuff around safety that's funded by the Department of Justice, the art stuff and enrichment stuff and other things. And then one of the other big things is our outcomes, right? So what are we doing in the high school? This year, I'm really psyched about this, and the acceptances keep rolling in, but 3 of our seniors are going to Cornell, 2 to Dartmouth, 1 to McGill. Lots of people, and I don't mean to single her out, but Lee's daughter has like a half dozen really interesting places to choose from. Yes, SCAD, so the Savannah College of Art and Design, people always go to Berkeley. Some students to the military, and the list is getting longer and longer and more interesting. So, and then also into work and into the trades and the Stockbridge School of Agriculture.
I have a question. Do we have how close we are building this school?
So the next phase is, we'll get this enrollment letter, and then hopefully on April 28th, they invite us into the feasibility study. And that's when we hire a project manager and architects, and they design something simple and elegant and appropriately costed, right? And so then we have that, and then we probably have 6 months after that of running around and getting people excited about it, and then some future votes. So if everything's aligned, maybe a shovel goes in the ground in 2 years, maybe 3.
Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, one last question from me, and this, I might have this question a couple of times tonight. And Mark, you may be the right person to, one of the potential ways we could use our community impact fees, I believe, would be for certain school-related educational programs. And so my question is, the monies that I guess are being allocated elsewhere in this binder, is a piece of that going to the school district? And then another question is there an ability for this budget to access some of those fees to essentially save some money and provide a good way to put those monies to work?
So the short answer is, for the past 3 years, a significant portion of the community impact funding has been provided to the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. But they apply for a grant each year through our Community Impact Funding Committee, and awards are announced late summer, early fall. So the short answer is yes.
Supplement.
Yeah. do you wanna-
It supplements things. So I think the last 3 years that fund has supported us, and I think it's gone from 130 or so to 150 to 185.
But it's specifically for youth prevention programs.
Right, so the first couple of years it covered the Director of Health and Wellness's position. Now that's in a budget, and we've been, and derelict the wrong word, but we've not had a high school health teacher for a long time, and we had a community group that did a lot of work around this with students and Railroad Street. So going forward, we are having a full-time high school health teacher in addition to a full-time middle school health teacher. And we took the wellness director position, who coordinates a lot of stuff across all 3 schools, and we built that into our own budget.
And Bill,
But
if you look at
here's a question, a follow-up question that makes me look like a really great guy, is when the town contributes those impact fees, is that for the benefit of the entire district, or is it somehow just for the benefit of Great Barrington?
for the benefit of the entire district.
Yeah, it is for the benefit of the entire district.
All right, so,
Well, I realize, Phil, what you already know, we're 71% of the students of
Right,
our
right.
own students, so it's the majority, it's 3/4 almost.
no, I agree. I told you it would make me look like a great guy to ask that question, but I just
You are
want
a great
to
guy.
make sure I understand it, that's all. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
And if anything comes up, like, you know where I am, reach out to me. We're happy to talk more about it. And as you go through the warrant article process, we're happy to come back as well. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, under tab 9 special articles is the Southern Berkshire ambulance fund. Gentlemen, come on up.
Are you want to come here?
Yes, please. Introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what this year is bringing us.
My name is Jim Santos. I'm currently the president of the board of directors of the ambulance squad. This is Joe Cresci. He's our treasurer. A couple of other board members back here, and we have our assistant chief of operations, Caleb Stone. I just wanted to take I know you've got a very busy schedule. I just want to take a couple of minutes and lead you into why we are here this evening. It's been our mission since day one, back when this organization was incorporated in 1968, to provide 911 emergency services to the 6 towns that we serve. That was always done, since it was a volunteer organization at that time, it was always done with no cost to the towns. From 1960, when a citizen dials 911, they're looking for one of 3 essential services: fire, police, or ambulance. From 1968 until 2014, we were a volunteer service. In 2014, we transitioned to a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And this brought some changes to the way we operated. Number 1 is that we upgraded to a paramedic service. Number 2, we went from a full volunteer service to an all-paid service. Part of the cost of doing that is what we call cost of readiness, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. From 1968, with one exception, the year 2021, we continued to provide the ambulance service to the 6 towns for free. We can no longer operate that way. We need financial support from the towns to continue. We're now faced with 3 major challenges. The first being EMS financing and payments do not adequately cover our standby costs and fixed costs, thus placing us at a financial risk. On many calls, both the ones that we bill Medicare and Medicaid, we lose money. Our aging population has changed, our payer mix has changed, meaning that the age of the folks that we serve has changed. With the more elderly population, we have more people transitioning to Medicare, Medicaid, and they pay very poorly, as anyone who's dealt with insurance knows. We get lower reimbursement from those. The second problem, which is probably the biggest one, is our all-paid workforce. Along with this goes a lack of adequate workforce. Since the pandemic started, there has been a loss of over 1/3 of all EMS workforce all over. It's not just here, that's across the board. Retention and recruitment gets more difficult, and there's a severe shortage of EMTs and paramedics out there to hire. We are frequently understaffed. We have to compete with other services for staff, and to do that, we need to raise salaries and benefits. These challenges, as I've said, are not unique to us. This is happening throughout the state, it's happening throughout the Northeast, all over the country. There are organizations we read in the data and the articles that we get in EMS and things like that. We see articles weekly where organizations are having to do exactly what we're doing this evening. They have to go to the towns and municipalities that they serve and ask for assistance. Some services are even closing because they just can't operate any further. We know that your town needs to provide ambulance coverage to its citizens. How you do that is ultimately up to you. We feel that we provide a good service to the town, and we would like to continue to do that. We feel that you are your best option, and that's what we would like to continue to do. At that point, now I guess we'll entertain some questions. Joe will answer some of your financial questions, and some of the budget ones maybe Caleb can answer, and we'll do the best that we can to answer your questions.
So you said there were 3 issues, and I have the payments you received for the service are lower than your cost, workforce issues, and I didn't catch the third.
That's my fault if there should only be two.
Okay, that's fine.
You embarrassed me on the first one.
Sorry, is there a presentation that was handed out? Obviously, don't have it here.
No, there's nothing in there.
What's paramedical services?
Paramedic?
Yeah.
Paramedic is the-
They were before.
You want to explain that?
So that's our level that we operate at, so you have two different levels of service, basic ambulance support, paramedic life support, or advanced life support. We operate advanced life support, we're actually the only ones south of Lee that operate that high. And we're pretty much, let's describe the mobile ER, our paramedics have 30 medications, defibrillation, intubation, so we are essentially a mobile ER.
That's different than EMT or is it
So it's the next level up, it'd be like, an EMT, what they describe, an EMT would be like physician assistant, and the paramedic, the doctor. That's just the reference, it's the kind of the idea that they're both kind of the same job, but one is much more advanced.
okay, and you need much more advanced paramedic?
Yes, for paramedics, sir.
And that's what we're not now.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we have 24.
Since 2014, we've been a paramedic service.
Thank you.
There you go.
So can you just refresh everyone's memories on, you know, how many times you've come to the town for funding and where we are in that process? Because obviously this is, a repeat of some funding that we've given you. in
The
the
one
past.
time, to my knowledge anyway, because I've only been on the board for about the last year and a half. They came in the 2021, and they went to the towns looking for funding. And
And last year was the request for the ARPA donation,
For the what donation, I'm sorry, the what?
to use some of the ARPA funding to purchase an ambulance.
Which is due to deliver in 2024.
And so this will be an annual fee that we will be assessing on the towns. We now know it's not sustainable to continue running just on the reimbursements from the patients that we transport.
So is this being built into your budget? Is this gonna be an annual fee that you're gonna be looking?
That is
for
correct.
Barrington?
Yes,
And will this be changing year to year depending on the number of?
we
calls?
anticipate that the largest, the most significant change each year will be COLA. We've done enough historical forecasting based on the historical data and the anticipated changes in the medical care field. And we feel that probably the expense of equipment and medications that we can absorb through the insurance reimbursements. The COLA increases will probably be the largest. Somehow that also, to correlate why that makes sense, is that we do get reimbursed for transferring people. So our largest cost is not the transporting of patients. The largest cost is being ready to serve the towns 24/7, 365. That we're not making any money when the trucks are just sitting in the hall. So hence, that's the COLA increase that would likely cause the increase annually to each of the towns.
Ed and then Madonna and then back to her.
Thank you. I want to point out a big change in the ask. Because it was something I objected to in the past was they were basing it on the number of calls each town received. And as they've pointed out, it's not expensive to send the ambulance out, it's expensive to have the ambulance and the staff. So this time the ask is based on, I believe, assessed values in the different towns. So I feel a lot more fair of an ask. Right? Obviously, it would be nice if it were like the old days and they didn't ask for anything. But this is the new reality. So that I think is a very big improvement in the process. And thank you for it.
Madonna.
Yeah, could you describe the fleet of truck, what vehicles do you have? I know we have the fire department that has a first responder, but that's not you.
Yeah, so the staffing model we try to achieve is 2 24-hour paramedic trucks. That's what the paramedic has basic, that's what we try to achieve.
So that's what you have here at the Fairview, two trucks.
So I have 2 staff trucks, when we have one of that full fleet, I have 4 trucks, I'll have 4 trucks available, so the idea is, you have 2 mainline trucks, I have a surge truck, so if we anticipate, like say we put our needs an ambulance, like for a special event, we can staff that truck. And then I have a mechanical spare, so in case a truck goes down for a large repair, I don't lose capacity.
So you got 4, basically.
I have
3 and
I currently have 2, and I have 2 brand new ones coming this month.
We did eliminate one vehicle because when we assessed what we had on staff, what the costs were. We decided that what we had is a fly car where one individual would be able to go out and respond to support other towns or to support the existing crews. It just was not sustainable to be able to keep that level of service and response. We sold that vehicle actually to the town of Monterey.
Monterey has the letter, so.
Could you speak a little bit to the increases in the activities in towns or the whole area? I mean, you made.
You mean the number of calls?
Yeah, I mean, you made this, I'm sure you know, it's a bit of a calibrating art
Yeah,
here,
it-
never perfect, always.
It's not a
recheck.
perfect science, for
So,
sure.
yeah, but just to
So
give
we
me a
can base
sense,
it on
right,
historical
just to give me a
use.
sense, what is the trend for the last 5 years?
So in general, last 5 years, hard as COVID.
Whatever, yeah.
COVID really put a
but
camera.
Let's make the.
In general, it gives us about 4% a year. We have
4% a year.
increase in 911 call volume.
Mhm.
What really hurt us is the change in what's called our payer mix, which is what kind of insurance people carry. And
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
I
well,
totally understand that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So we do have an increase in an older population, so unfortunately, that's
right, right. So
making a decline on our
you have a double
reimbursement.
dip there, yeah.
yeah,
Can I ask you, and so just to give me an idea, how many calls per year?
so
Just-
We handled three.
last year, 2022, we had 3,000 calls, 3,050 calls.
And that was for how many towns?
So
Six towns.
Six
that
towns.
includes my transfer volume. We had 1,890 911 requests for the 6 towns.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the 6 towns, have you gone through the budget process with the other towns and then have they agreed to the?
We did go through the process with everybody, and on the 21st, we had a combined meeting of the towns. We have confirmation.
We have confirmation from 2 towns. They're our 3rd town that we have actually visited with, and we have 2 towns that are.
Have requested
That we're
information.
talking to.
And do you have like a breakdown of the ask from each town and where that? fits in
Yes,
with their
it's in the
budget?
letter that went out to each of the towns. We wanted full transparency to everybody to see the number.
There was a letter that went out to town.
Well, you marked on it.
No, we didn't see it.
So Alford is $27,275. I won't get any change. Egremont is $45,144. Great Barrington, $151,293. Monterey, $51,669. Sheffield, $65,825. And Mount Washington, $8,792.
And
Is there any reason why we can't get a copy of that letter?
Oh, you certainly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then, because I guess I'm still not clear where this 151,294.
Oh, okay, sorry, I can explain that. So
Well, could we is it in the letter?
The calculation is not in the letter.
the explanation, the calculation.
as you let them explain it, so.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, when we went for the balanced budget calculations, it was $350,000. That was the deficit.
Okay,
And so we took the valuations, the property valuations of the 6 towns. We used the same formula that the state uses, as well as yourselves. We did not use the EQV, we used the other set property value and proportioned the 350 based on that share of total property value that the town
so
had.
this, can I ask just for clarification? So this is similar to what the school uses, which is the town's assessed value of the town, is that correct? It's not the average property value or something like that.
It's not the average, it's the total
The
assessed property value,
town's
correct?
value of
And it's a 4-year rolling, so it's not just 1 year, so it's 2019 to 2022 year.
Oh, interesting. Okay. It's a 4-year, you said? right?
Yes.
Okay.
19, 20, 21, 22. Yes, sorry.
So, so what is the overall budget? I'm trying to get a sense of, where this fits in with your overall budget. If you're saying you have you went through your budget, you have a deficit of $350,000, then you look to the towns for helping you with that deficit. So where is this in terms of the overall?
Caleb, I'll have to ask you for that over again.
Yeah, I got it, okay.
And it would be really helpful to get this on one sheet, just so we can kind of see
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
overview of.
So our total expected expense for 2023 is gonna be $2.1 million. We anticipate revenue from our transfer activities and other activities like donations and things like that at 1.758 million.
Okay,
It ends up being, the deficit ends up being like 349,000, something, that's 350, making that even number for everyone.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously you use fundraising as well, being a nonprofit, so how does that work into the scheme of things? Like if you were gonna say, okay, we have this deficit, therefore we're gonna increase fundraising, or we're gonna do.
We certainly have done that, correct.
So how do we as a town know where that is in terms of your overall fundraising effort?
Some of those details that we don't necessarily publicly release, since we are a private organization, we certainly are willing to discuss and get any help from people who want to help with our fundraising efforts, but we are seeking grants. We're looking to do that even more aggressively in the future, and that perhaps will lower the ask that we have for the towns going forward. But we certainly have made significant changes within the board, within the structure of Southern Berkshire, to bring on board people with the skill sets that will help us to run the most efficiently that we possibly can.
And I know there was a couple of things from last time we came before the ARPA. And a couple of changes we did change Allison's Pittsfield for our accounting firm. That was one of their specialty not-for-profits, but that's the same kind of from the Found Villages issue. So we're with them. Unfortunately, they've been just a shut of the rest of the world, so we don't have our 2021 done yet, but they are working on that.
So Jim, you've been on the board a couple of years, but since I've known you a lot longer than, how long have you been on the squad?
I've been on the squad since 1975.
Right, I think it's important for people to know, Jim is not a newcomer.
I ran on the squad for 10, 15 years. I continue to run in New Marlboro. So yeah, my wife runs the New Marlboro squad. We're all people who are absolutely dedicated to this. We're doing it as volunteers because we want to see this exist.
Yeah, I feel a lot more comfortable than the last time.
Than other people who came before you.
No, I'm not gonna say that.
Yeah.
But I do feel more comfortable that there is not, the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train coming in.
Thank you, Steve.
And I do think that, there are some improvement to go.
Oh, yes.
But I think you may.
We're working on it.
Yeah, you're working on it. I do say that, I think we're gonna be partners of yours if we agree to this. And, we now have a board member from representing the town. It was Chief Berger, now Sergeant Carlotto, and that was a big step forward. And I do feel that we're in a better direction. I don't feel like that you're gonna come back to us next year asking for $450,000 that,
I hope not.
yeah. And if you do, you'll have a darn good reason. I hope.
More problems than just that.
Yeah.
That's the case, yeah.
I mean, it's not perfect, but it's better, it's much better than it was the last time. And two of you I know, and I know probably your family at least.
That's
So-
correct.
So I feel good about that. Caleb, I've known a few years. So I actually feel like you guys are all hardworking members of the squad. May not have a V for volunteer, but it's still a local group of people who are just trying to do the best. And I'm not sure I always got that vibe.
The one thing I would like to just reinforce is the fact the fact that we have all paid employees. And to keep to stay fully staffed, which we're a little understaffed right now. To be fully staffed, we have to keep, every 2 months, we're looking at, we may need to increase our salaries and the benefits. Because there's a finite group of paramedics and EMTs around. So if one service raises the salaries that they're offering, you see a trend where people will go to that one. So, and it's unfortunate, that's the way it is, but it's, that's the medical profession. Now, you see it with nurses, you see it with all other professions. So that's a big challenge to us, and the only way we can stay staffed is that we have to stay competitive with the other, higher.
We're big push on homegrown some of ours and
And
aftercare.
we are, that's
Perhaps we can work with his vocational program even on something like that.
we are working to send some of our own people to paramedic school and down the road, reimbursing them, for their education. So it's gonna be it's small at the moment, but that's the sort of thing that we have to do.
Just a question on salaries, what's the rate that you would take an EMT, like a full-time salary, roughly?
So our starting rate is like 20 now.
Okay.
That's for 1 year, like, you're fresh out of EMT school,
Okay.
which is Yeah, I think 19, my life 19, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's around there, and it's 2% per year of experience you have.
Okay, and do they live in Barrington or are you?
Majority of, almost all of our providers live in Berkshire County.
Surprising how far some of them do drive.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
What was that salary again?
An EMT starts at 19,
What's the paramedic, absolute basic?
paramedic at 27.
27, which is. Phil, go ahead.
Sorry, 25, I'm sorry, it's 25.
We are regularly canvassing how the other agencies we have been, just like every other private business, to figure out how to stay competitive and. Not all the information publicly available, quite obviously, so we do our best to pull it in from employees.
So with projections, and we can pretty much feel it's gonna be around the 150 mark that you'd be looking for, like. looking
Next
out
year?
next year.
Maybe a 3 or 4% is what we figure is the average COLA that most communities are using. And so we kind of put that into our school bill as an estimate of what we would expect it to go next year.
You know what the inflation is. It's 8%, so, yeah.
Yeah, we have increases just like everybody's household, your insurance, your gas this past year has been a big increase for us, over the last couple of years.
Actually, it's our equipment, they were.
Phil, go ahead.
One of the good things that's gonna happen is, Caleb just said, we have 2 new rigs that we're gonna be getting very soon. We've been waiting a year and a half for them, but we're gonna be getting them very soon. Which means the trucks that we have, which are very, very old, with a lot of high mileage. The cost of repairs has been high on those rigs, so we'll be getting rid of that, within the last couple of new rigs that will.
And you sell them?
Do we sell them?
And minimal value, we had an offer of $2,000 for one of them.
They both have.
Better than zero dollars.
They both have over
Better than
200,000
zero, correct.
miles on them.
Phil, go ahead.
Yes, I echoing Steve's comments, I completely support the work you're doing, and I can obviously understand the need. It's a critical need. And I do also agree that my sense is, from a managerial perspective, your organization's more on top of things than it was a year or two ago when we last spent time on this. What I would say is I understand the macro trends that you're referring to, and that this is essentially going to become a line item in our budget on an annual basis. Given that, my personal view is we need to see more of the financial details that you're referring to, which you're referring to financial statements as well as projections. And just again, being the financial ogre here, I just think if we're adding this to our budget on an annual basis, we just need to do some more diligence on those numbers. We don't have, it's essentially going to become a department on our budget, and we don't have people like Allison looking over your numbers. So from that point of view, I don't know exactly the process that we would do that and what you're comfortable with, but I do think there needs to be a little more detailed review of the numbers.
Yeah, we can certainly work with you. I would say again, as a private organization, we sort of straddle that fence of being a vendor / department. And I say department because we have such a close relationship with the towns that we serve. But there is a certain level of respect that as a private organization, I also can't risk certain financial data that another agency could potentially use to come into the area if they're interested in taking over the business. So you can understand from my perspective, I don't necessarily want other companies who are prowling the country right now trying to gobble up failing organizations. Because unfortunately it ends up bastardizing the service that they provide in the community. I don't want to see that happen.
Let Phil follow up first.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I can see Phil wanting to say something.
No, I appreciate the comment because I now have a better understanding as to sort of your concerns about the disclosure.
Thank you.
On the flip side, though, you say you're a private organization, but you're a 501c3 nonprofit. So as a IRS matter, you file public financials.
Yes, and so those are open to you then, those audited
so
statements.
I don't I don't want the group to have the view that you're making, that you're giving us private information, because again, obviously, there's
Yes.
levels of detail. I appreciate that, but you are
Yes.
required to make that information public to a certain extent.
Yes. But it's the line by line that's where we'll have to talk about what we reveal and in what forum. Perhaps we go down to the local restaurant and provide those details rather than in an open forum.
Yeah, so I'm open-minded. I think you heard my point.
And I am as well, as long as you know where I'm coming from and my concerns, which it's great that I can express those.
Yeah, and I think we understand your concerns in the same respect. We've just become your partner and we're gonna give 150,000 or more. So I think we'll have to come to some understanding.
Right, and you can feel comfortable without having to issue another RFP every year for this.
I had the same point with Bill, just.
Okay. Rich,
My question was really, what is the role of the board? We do have a member on the Great Barrington member on the Southern Berkshire board. So what is the role of the board?
Sure, so the role of the board is to have complete oversight of the organization. Caleb, the other directors of operations, report to the board of directors, and they serve our will.
So through the board, we would learn a lot of the details regarding
Yes.
why things are done the way they're done and how
Yes.
the business is being run, right?
That's correct. So Charlie sitting on the board was completely part of the budget process, saw all the paperwork. And so there was nothing hidden there, but he's reviewing it in his role as a board member. And hence it would not be subject to public knowledge.
So I guess maybe for next year, it'd be helpful to have that board director with you on the presentation and have a breakdown of the budget and projections, just we have the
Sure, that
sense
would
of
work.
if this is gonna be an annual
Mhm.
line item, I think we really should have that level of detail.
anyone else?
I just have, as far as staffing goes and, just the note on your salaries. You do say you reimburse after, say somebody you're training, you send them to school, you reimburse.
We're working on it. Yeah,
Working on the program. Where would they go to school for that?
Paramedic, there's only like 2 or 3 schools in the area, one Pleasant Valley, one's Greenfield Community College. And the other one is through AMR Public, it's and CTI.
It's pretty.
AMR is the retail company.
Yeah.
It's slim. It used to be much more plentiful where you could go and be
Yeah.
educated.
Find that with all the trades really. And with those salaries, obviously you said you're struggling to fill them, but you just casting a wider net each time, I assume.
Right, yeah. The trouble with the short staff is now I have to pay overtime to fill the chef.
Right, right. And that's how people are getting by, probably by taking all that overtime.
Right.
I know you guys are a private entity, and I know Mark had talked about increasing salaries about 4% to keep people. And that's what you're asking. I think I'm not a numbers guy. Simple man, but I see the need for the services myself. I might not make someone happy when I make this comparison, but we were talking about 150 G going to let's say train, I think 150 G going to our ambulance squad. Certainly that.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else before we move? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Really, really.
Thank you.
Okay.
You get that. Yes. we'll get it. Created over time. Yeah. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Ready to go. So we're gonna be on page 14 of chapter 6, which is the police. Chief, just 1 second, okay, I'll take it back to them.
Really do good ones. And I- Yeah.
Unfortunate how that works.
Right.
Okay, Chief, go ahead and give us the highlights of your budget.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for making a few minutes for me here. So this year's budget, Kara, myself, and Sergeant Carlotto, Sergeant Ulrich, and Sergeant Peebles, really, we try to focus on looking at the future of the department and what we're seeing as trends and some of the ways that we can move the department forward to be prepared for the future. With police reform that went into effect in 2020, some of the things that we learned from that is the idea behind the police reform was really, really good, but unfortunately, it wasn't well thought out on the application of it, and it created a few hiccups for smaller communities such as ourselves. The primary or one of the real big problems that we're seeing is based around the staffing. We're not just us, but police departments across the Commonwealth, and especially in Berkshire County. When we relied on the use of part-time police officers, we had a heavy use for them to offset our staffing needs, to help keep our budget manageable. So looking at that and seeing the requirements to maintain, to get certified as a part-time officer, it's just not the candidates out there. There's not the people that can meet the requirements, that can maintain the requirements. We have not had any luck. We've lost every single part-timer that we've had because of police reform, with them not be able to maintain or obtain their certifications for the post commission to become a police officer in Massachusetts. So looking at that, and looking at the growth of the town in certain areas, and our types of calls that we've been dealing with the last few years, especially the last 12 to 16 months. This year's budget, I really focused on staffing, not this year, but also in the future. I anticipate our staffing for full-time officers to change slightly. So the biggest changes that I have in my budget based on the types of calls that we're seeing, the complexities of the calls, is that we just don't have enough officers to handle the types of calls and the amount of calls safely. So that's just the reactive type calls that I'm looking at, but also the proactive call programs that I want to keep in place that I've worked hard on the last couple of years to start and to try to grow them. So that's why I'm asking for an additional officer in this year's budget. I try to manage that carefully, looking at the numbers, so it's not a huge financial impact. 4% of my budget is based on collective bargaining stuff. The other 2%, I think I have a 6.02% increase. So 4% is for collective bargaining. The other 2% is operational, including that additional officer. And I was able to manage that by a couple of different reasons. One was by the unanticipated loss of some senior officers over the last few months. Some full-time officers either went to the state police, another one left for another police agency out of state. So that gave me a little bridge in my salary from a new hire versus a tenured officer. Additionally, I was able to offset it by zero funding. My specialist budget was zero because I do not anticipate being able to hire any part-time police officers. So I took that money and I was able to offset that salary of that additional officer slightly with that. Other big things is I ask for an increase in parking control, a slight increase there, about a 25% increase, and that's just to get a more presence in the town for parking enforcement, especially during the summer, holiday weekends, and things like that. I currently have 2 part-time employees that are filling that role. One is out on medical leave, but I just hired our intern that has done a great job from the high school as a part-time employee. She just currently started. You might see her walking around out there. She's doing a nice job. So my goal is to have them working side by side, staggering some shifts this summer to get a better presence out there. Another change that is the co-responder program. So unfortunately, we started a co-responder program, which is the mental health clinician. Ivy filled that role, and she was staffed through the Breen Center with their support. With the success of it came some other towns seeing that and wanting to create their own program. So the Tri-Town Health created their own co-responder program, which services Lee, Stockbridge, and Lenox. And they funded the program, and unfortunately, Ivy took that position. So that left our position open here in Great Barrington. And when she was servicing Great Barrington, Stockbridge, Egremont, Sheffield, New Marlboro, and Monterey, all the surrounding communities of us, she was serving. So all those towns currently don't have one. So that just went into effect about 6 weeks ago. I've had several meetings to try to figure out a solution to resolve this problem. I met with most of the surrounding chiefs, and one of the ideas I had was to put a small amount in our budget, so maybe collectively we could be able to help offset that position and help support that position. What really attracted Ivy to go to Tri-Town Health was the salary. It was almost twice as much as what she was making working for us. So so I met with all the chiefs. They've all asked, they've all put the same ask in for a $5,000 sum to sponsor this program if we can get it running. I've met with Dr. Elliott from Berkshire Health Systems and pitched my ultimate goal, which would be to have a crisis unit stationed out of Fairview. I think it would free up a lot of the ambulance services when they have to transport people to Pittsfield, to BMC for different mental health issues. We could have that person work out of Fairview. Again, this is my wish list. It's nothing that's set in stone, but hopefully maybe someday we can make it happen. And then it would save us a lot of resources because we'd have those resources stationed right out of Fairview somehow, or with the Breen Center. Dr. Elliott did speak to the Breen Center after our meeting, and he said that they are willing to work with us to try to move this program forward. So that's what that $5,000 is for. It's nothing that's guaranteed, but I think having the ability to be able to fund it or contribute that little bit of money, if it does come to fruition, would be nice. Let me see what else. The other down at the bottom, another big part would be the travel and the training, line 57-100, second to last. And that's really just about the training of the new officers. If we are able to hire the new officers, the cost of that is that's where that increase is coming from. In the future, I would really like to have another layer between myself and the command staff. I think it's important with all the changes, with all the requirements that are being placed on the police department these days, with record keeping, transparency, accountability. As you know, we just got a reaccreditation. Just managing all that is a really, really big task, but an important task because, we want to still be the most professional department that we can, maintain that professionalism. So again, looking down the road, I'd probably be looking long-term, adding an additional officer on top of what I'm asking this year, and possibly another layer to the command staff. That's my long-term goal for the department. I hope to get there within a few years. I'm just kind of putting it out there now, so it's not a surprise in the future. But again, analyzing the calls, the type of calls with the anticipated increase in the buildings that are going to bring into our community. I think in order to keep everybody safe, and it's something that we're gonna have to consider in the future. I think there's one other thing I wanted to point out, and that was nope, I think that's it. If it comes to me, I will let you know. But that's pretty much an oversight of my budget and why I proposed it.
Thank you, appreciate that. Questions?
I have a question. I see you have 2 lines for training, so the total is actually over $100,000. Could you just speak to that? Because you said you are looking to train 1 additional officer.
Oh,
Or
so-
is it, yeah,
Okay, so the top training line of 51,930, that training line is to maintain our annual trainings. That's qualifications for every piece of equipment we carry, our annual law updates, some additional trades, could be bias, salaries to cover those trainings, to send people to them. We have, the state requires us to maintain a certain amount of training hours per year, plus additional required training. So that is to cover the salaries for all those additional trainings that we have to maintain on a yearly basis. To maintain our certifications.
when you say salaries, whose salaries? I thought you would just send people for training.
Right, so it's, say, for example, if I have to send somebody to a firearms recertification, that's done outside of their normal work time. Because they can't work and go out of town for their trainings. So I have to send them to training. So I have to pay them to go to
Or you
training.
compensate them for actually attending the training. I see,
Yes.
yeah.
Compensation
Yeah,
to attend
okay.
the training.
I see, yeah, that makes sense. And then, so would you say that the other line, which is the 30,000, that how much it costs to train one officer?
That's for the academy fees, and all the equipment that we were required to provide for them for the academy, travel, mileage, all that extra fees that we have to compensate when we do send somebody to the police academy.
So that's the total cost that will cost us to have that person trained.
Right, that's what the increase is for the additional officers. I had gone to the finance committee earlier this year to request funds for some anticipated staffing issues that we didn't know were coming.
Yeah, before that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what those fees are for. Very identical to what I asked for earlier this year.
Okay, and one last question, and if you are hiring a person who is actually already a certified police officer, do you still have to go through this?
You
This
do not
kind of a
use,
cost?
no, if they are a full-time academy certified officer, we do not have to train them.
Right.
The problem that I've been seeing trying to recruit new trained officers is the fact that we are a younger department, and those senior officers from other agencies aren't attracted to come here because seniority wise they would go to the bottom. So they've already established their tenure within a department, and to leave that department to come somewhere where they're going to be starting over again is not that attractive.
So they don't carry over the level of seniority?
No,
No, okay.
no, that's in the collective bargaining agreement, how the seniority is defined. It's aggregate time within the position in the department.
Okay, thank you.
Eric and then
Yeah, Chief, just back to the co-responder, was that working well with the 6 towns, or is that something in the future you think the town of Great Barrington would need more time of, you know what I mean, or more of their time as a permanent member of whether it's your force or the ambulance squad, like you were stating?
I think the shared approach, Eric, it's a great question, is really the way to go for us. We, being kind of the hub of South County, we rely on our neighboring agencies, and they rely on us. So having that shared service, there's a lot of crossover. And what I mean by that is some of the people that we deal with in Great Barrington are actually also connected to the other communities. And it's nice to be able to have that bridge, that communication. especially in these types of situations. So I think the shared services works really well with this, this particular thing.
Okay.
And Ian, and Lee, then Phil.
Yeah, I guess, I wanna dovetail on the co-responder line item, and I see you requested 12,000, but the recommendation is 5,000. Do you feel you can do what you need to do with 5,000?
The reason I went at 12,000 is when I first was looking at this and trying to propose this, and it was right around the time that the other towns, the chiefs were in budget talks. I did not include New Marlboro as an ask, and it was just strictly because it was an oversight on my part. So I was rushing to try to get it done and to reach out to all these chiefs, and I didn't know if they would be able to get their request in. And also the call volume is much greater. It's probably at least twice as much for this service in Great Barrington versus the other communities. And I had asked them for 5,000. And I just upped ours a little bit based on, you know, what I thought was an approximate of the shares of percentage of the services that we were getting. And then I did talk to New Marlboro, and they put in, I don't know how these other towns have made out with their budget process, if they're getting passed or not. I haven't heard anything yet. But they all did pledge to me that they were gonna put it in there and try for it. So that's why I did reduce it after talking with Mark.
So I guess we had somebody and we lost them because they got a better salary elsewhere. Are we just setting ourselves up for the same situation?
I'm hoping not. It's a tough position to find it's got to be the right fix, because you have a mental health clinician who's also working with the police. So there's a little bit of different dynamics that work there. Ivy did work really well with that mixture of social work / crisis intervention / police work. So it has to be the right person, and that's again, I don't know how that's going to play out, because we're at the beginning stages of this. We've only been to, you know, we're just talking about it.
All right, thank you. And then can I just ask, you began your presentation by talking about the greater complexity of calls that you've been getting. Is that related to this need for a co-responder?
Absolutely. There definitely is some crossover there between some mental health, substance abuse issues. You know, I think if we really broke down and analyzed each call and found the underlying reason we're there, I think that plays a big role in it. We did just start the that new tracking. It's called DTS. No, it's I can't remember the name of it either. Where we are partnered with this to identify people of concern and sharing that information to get them the services they need. So it's like a tracking type thing. So we can say, yep, this person, a way to communicate to get other agencies a quicker way to follow up with the people with either mental health and or substance abuse issues.
Okay, great. And then my last question, the deputy chief, and I'm sorry if I missed this, is this a stipend? This is the 20,000? Oh, we cut that. No. So sorry.
That's aspirational.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I that's, you know, Mark graciously let me keep it in there. And the reason I did is so we can at least have the conversation to know that I am looking to in the future to keep the department moving forward. I think for it's going to be key just for operationally, for accountability, for oversight of the officers. So I did want to try to do it this year, but maybe in the future, when I bring this around, at least you're aware of my long-term goals.
I understand. Thank you.
Lee, and then Phil, and Garfield.
Thank you, Chief Sorty. I appreciate your creative budgeting in getting a new officer in only for 2% of the increase in the budget. So that's impressive. That doesn't include obviously pension and healthcare and all that. That's just the salary line item. That's in there.
Yes, that's correct. That's covered in, I believe, the town manager's budget. And also, I'm sorry, Lee, to interrupt you. It just came to me that also, if you look right now, our staffing is at a low, and I have no part-time to cover it, so my overtime is decreasing. Was able to decrease, and the reason, if you look at the overtime in this budget decrease, is because with the proper staffing, with that additional staffing, I can cover shifts instead of filling them with overtime, which I currently have to do with the numbers. I would be able to fill them without having to backfill that shift and pay overtime. So I confidently feel that I can reduce my overtime budget if I get that extra officer, because I can manage the schedule better. Results that we're going to see is officers that are less worked, not overworked, less stressed, less likelihood of mistakes, less likelihood of, any type of errors that could happen. So there's going to be some other effects that I hope to see that we can't put on paper for adding that additional officer.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate that, the, creative budgeting and the staffing. So I do echo everyone's other comments about the co-responder program. I really think this is something that we desperately need, and I would love to find a way to find money to really bolster that. So that would be just a request out there to see if there's a way to support the department more to get that going quicker, because the loss of IVs is huge, and I would like to support that and offer support. So
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I can just give you a quick, even officer, when we first started this program, that were like, holy cow, what are we doing? Within months, they were coming to me and saying, this is one of the best programs we have. So even then, some of the naysayers, and it was a different approach to policing, really bought into it. And that was my biggest concern, getting the buy-in from the officers. So by getting that, that's the success. And I think the community saw it, and it helped so many people.
So let me just add to that.
Yeah.
We're meeting again tomorrow night, as you're aware, and we'll start to look at the budgets to see if we want to make changes. It wouldn't hurt you to make you or Kara to make some phone calls tomorrow to see how these towns are going on their funding. Because if that falls apart, what I'm hearing here, including myself, still want to fund this. So instead of waiting till our budget's cast in stone, let's see if in the next 24 hours, you say, yeah, all the towns are going along with it, that's terrific, but then we're fine with 5,000. But if the towns are starting to have second thoughts, we're not. So let's see by tomorrow night, where you are.
Absolutely. And additionally, just so of the 19th extra officer, some of the plans, just so you know what I have planned for that person once I get my staffing going, is really a stronger presence at the schools. I think it's important. We've been talking about it for years. I know I've had some conversations with Peter Dillon about it. In the light of world events, I just think it's really, really time to have a creative approach, working with the school to have a stronger presence there. And that's some of the plans. I just sent 2 officers to training, Officer Hortez. This is like 3 weeks ago, was already planned, and Officer Messina to get some specialized training around youth and interactions with youth in schools. So I've been kind of working on this, and then we had the Valentine's Day issue. But that's something that gives us a creativity for the proactive programs that we can do with the school. I mean, there's almost 1,000 probably people, staff and students up at that school at any given time. That's a good portion of our community. And I would like to see some type of real interactive, positive program, relationship building program that we can have up there.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And Mark, this is probably a little bit directed your way. I want to come back to this issue of the community impact fees. We have a big pile of money there, and we've been advised and guided by town council that we have a very limited ability to use those funds, and we have to be careful where we allocate them. But that, the phrase substance abuse was mentioned by the chief, and based on what we've received, it seems like we have a degree of ability and flexibility to allocate some of that money to a handful of the various programs that the chief has walked through. And certainly anything school related seems to be completely consistent with, I guess, again, his view of how those, how the community impact fees can be spent. So I know in the past, the Community Impact Funding Committee has allocated some amount of money, I believe, if I remember correctly, to the police department. But I wonder if, given the need and given the amount of money that is deposited in that account right now, are we integrating the budgetary requests of the police department to our ability to use that money? And maybe another way of putting that is the money, do you foresee money going to the police department that would be adding on to programs? Or would they be filling, again, I'd like a little clarity as to how we're integrating that funding source with and potentially the money going to the police department, all for very important needs, with the budgetary money that we're allocating the police department.
So what I would say is, I think the community impact funding free cash that we have now would probably be a better fit for the co-responder program. But I need to know a little bit more about the chief's plans for some additional police presence at the high school before I can answer that question. So I'll talk to him offline, and we'll resume this conversation tomorrow night or at the public.
Okay, but it just seems like there's, it's beyond the scope of this group, but there's a big need and there's a big pile of money, and I just want to make sure that we're being as creative as possible to use that money.
Garfield. Okay, being part of that fund, I think we will indeed look closer, and I think we'd like to have a little more information, as Mark had said. But if it's going to be education based, as you're suggesting, certainly has a better chance of meeting out some money to the police than in the past. But my question is, event, Chief, and thank you for your service and what you guys are doing down there. I'm always interested to find out that you're keeping the staff up to date, and things are going smoothly in that area. Everyone's getting their political and social education. What are the events that you're spending $2,000?
Oh, the events line? Yeah, so that's different things. So we did the car show. We had a little tent there. We had the accreditation this year, where we had to provide some lunch and stuff for the people that did the assessors that volunteered to come in to do our reaccreditation. We had the truck day, just different events throughout the community that we hand out a couple stickers and some coloring books and things like that. We had some t-shirts that we handed out. So that's what the events line is that we paid for mostly this year for things like that.
It's not paying the officers, it's just paying for the things you're handing out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's to cover supplies and things like that. Yep.
Chief, I don't see any more questions, so thank you very much. Always appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Page 15, Fire Department, Section 6. Chief Berger, you're still?
Still here. We'll be along.
Okay, we don't want him leaving, so we're gonna keep you as long as possible.
Okay, yeah, be real nice to me tonight.
We're always nice to you.
Okay, so just a quick overview of my budget. Starting with the really simple part, our bottom half, the general expenses. There are no proposed changes there, nothing new. The increases are strictly trying to keep up with inflation and the extreme increase in everything. Most things have, in my 10 years as chief, most things have doubled. The cost of hoses doubled. The cost of buying PPE for a firefighter is doubled. I was getting it for $1,700 for just coat and pants for a firefighter 10 years ago. Now it's $3,500.
100-foot length of 5-inch hose has gone from $735 to $1,500. So these are just barely trying to keep up with that, but there's nothing new there, no changes there. My changes do come back to what's a very common theme, which is personnel. There are two things in the personnel budget that are increases. The first is for the call firefighters. They get paid hourly for training or when they get called in for incidents, and that's extremely low. They've been working with Mark to increase that, so that's what the increase of I believe $20,000 is there. Is just to they don't even get the cost of living adjustments each year, so it's been many years since they had any increase, and they were making way less than McDonald's. So it is any way that we can retain them for as long as we can has to be one of the #1 priorities of both the town and obviously the fire department. That's what that is. My other request is for a 4th full-time firefighter, which you'll see in there. And I have some handouts that we can pass around, going over that a little bit of data. And I don't know, I apologize, a little late to getting this done. I don't know if I did email it to you, Mark. I don't know if you can email it to Ed and Bill or anybody else online that needs it or wants it. But basically, looking for a 4th firefighter. I will say, obviously, I requested the full salary. It has been scaled back for the proposed budget for this year to start in July, so the second half of it would have, or January, so the second half would have to be funded in 2025. Basically, my little summary here and the data I provided you at the back of it, the call volume and workload for the fire department is dramatically increasing as the number and availability of call firefighters continues to decrease for us locally and just the national trends that are out there, both for fire departments and any other volunteer or organism. So the data I provided here just shows the first page shows the increase in calls. The first one specifically shows EMS calls, which I have filtered out from the primary fire and rescue calls that we run. But even there on the second page, figures 3 and 4, you'll see that fire and rescue calls are increasing quite steadily also. The last few pages show both the number of firefighters that we have, including all and full time, and you'll see that that is also on the steady decline in some ways. Then the last few pages are what I consider to be the kind of the most important metrics for what we're looking for, which is the both our initial response to an incident and how many firefighters ultimately were getting at an incident. So on the first, if you're at figure 6, you can see that our percentage of the time that we're getting 4 firefighters to an incident in under 10 minutes is staying fairly steady. We've worked extremely hard to maintain that, but that's the only metric we've been able to maintain. Every other metric is on the steady decline. So getting any additional help to an incident, you can see is again slowly declining because the number of firefighters that we have and their availability is declining. Then the last page, figure 9 and 10, that shows just really the total number of firefighters that we have responding to an incident, which that's figure 10, and figure 9 is really how fast we get them there, or whether or not we get them there in any really useful period of time. So you can see also that is, the average number of firefighters per incident, has decreased from, 6.29, in 2017 down to 4 almost 4.5 now. That's not maybe quite as bad as it looks there, because one of the things that we are working towards is trying to better send the right number of firefighters based on the incident, right? So a little bit of that decreased trend there is because maybe we don't have, I guess you could say, extra people showing up sometimes for some more minor incidents, but in general, that is just the decline in the availability of firefighters. So that's one of the main reasons for the request. The other one is the firefighter would be delegated the responsibility of maintenance for all of our equipment, both the small repairs and coordinating with vendors to make more major ones, but also, all of our equipment needs to be tested and certified on an annual basis. Some of that we do try to do in-house, others has to be done by third-party testing. So they would have that responsibility on top of the general day-to-day responsibilities of responding to incidents, training, and fire prevention and inspection. So happy to answer any questions or provide any other data for you that you're interested in. One of the things I've tried to do over my time as chief is maintain meticulous records so that it is possible to have a slightly more data-driven approach rather than just the fire chief's opinion when it comes to decision making.
Lee and then Phil.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the data. This is wonderful. It's really helpful. What is the salary of the fourth firefighter that you're full-time?
I believe starting pay is about 63,000 plus over.
Why would anybody become an EMT when they become a firefighter? Exactly. No wonder the EMTs are having trouble.
Well, we
do it.
require you to be a firefighter and an EMT, so well, I would agree, but you can't talk some of them into it, so yeah.
So Phil, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chief, and I agree with Lee that the data is very helpful. It seems like, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but it seems like the real increase is in the EMS incidents, and that the actual fire incidents, while certainly steady and quite, and a big number, that has been relatively steady. Can you speak to a bit on why you see on sort of why the EMS is trending up? We all probably have educated guesses, but maybe talk a little bit about why it's going up, and then you referred and typically on the EMS calls, are you also are you showing up alongside the ambulance team? I know that's a fairly complex and technical issue as to sort of the distinction between the two services, but maybe just talk a little bit about that.
So yes, what we do is we send our one staff firefighter on EMS calls. They arrive first on scene EMS calls in Great Barrington. Well, first of all, the calls are triage, so we only respond on priority 911 calls to non-healthcare facilities. We don't respond to the ambulance calls at doctor offices or the nursing homes or anything like that. That's or for certain police are on scene requesting an evaluation or a section 12 transport or something like that. We don't respond on those. The ones we do respond on, we just send the one firefighter that's staffed
And they are first on scene 75% of the time in town. So we are the first ones providing aid, controlling bleeding, initiating CPR, all of that kind of stuff. And they also obviously function as an extra set of hands, which is very important to assist the EMS crew. That is one of the things that we have done to try to streamline things. So it used to be we responded on the reason I only show actually the 3 years of data there for the EMS is we changed back in 2020. Whereas previously we responded on a fewer number of EMS calls. They were triaged a little bit more tightly, but it was a general page to the department. So you might have nobody show up, or you might have 8 or 9 people firefighters show up if it was, you know, at 5 o'clock in the evening and they were sitting down to dinner. So that's one of the things we changed to try to better utilize resources. We just send 1 EMT on those incidents now. So that's how that's utilized, and it's been both helpful for the fire department and for our firefighters not going out for a general call as often, and it's helpful to the ambulance to have that person there more reliably.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, obviously, as you prepare to move on to your next professional role, hopefully all the ideas that you may have for the efficiency between our ambulance team and the firefighters, if you could do your best to make sure you leave that wisdom with your successor, that would be great.
I have a question, and thanks for the metrics, really very helpful. Figure 5, you went from 31 active firefighters in 2015 to 16 2 years ago. The number 31, was it included? Did it include also volunteers, or was it
That's almost all volunteers.
all
So,
volunteers?
yes,
Okay.
it includes me too. Okay?
Right.
So including me, we only have 4 full-time firefighters.
So the
active.
rest were volunteers, and the number of people who are paid remained the same throughout the years. It's just the number of volunteers fluctuated.
No, that has slowly been instituted. Back in 2015, actually, we had 1 part-time firefighter. There were no full-time firefighters then.
Mhm. So, but over the years, you changed that mix, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to understand why that.
And the way
Yeah.
it's very, since we're not funded for a specific number of volunteers, the metric by which I come up with that is actually I just include the number of firefighters who responded to 40 or more incidents in the course of the year.
Okay, that was
And because we always have lots of people coming and going or gone at college, and I can't say that we have as steady a roster in that way. So, you know, the 31 is probably a little on the high side almost, if you know what I mean. And interestingly, the increase to 21 last year was really good and bad. Not really any new firefighters, but some of the ones that we had that were sort of hanging on by a thread and we were trying to keep have actually come back and been more active. So that's what that increase shows there. It's not really new firefighters.
Okay, so you just gotta normalize it like that.
Yeah.
And my other question is, the performance metrics you have here.
Yep.
What is like, what would be considered the best practice standard? Okay, and I know it's very tricky, but.
Yeah, so
Give me
yes,
a view, yeah.
by the NFPA standard, you're supposed to have, I believe, 12 firefighters on the scene in 10 minutes.
That would be the
So
golden standard. Yeah.
we're not in our dream world meeting that, and I think there is
a lot of work to be done in the future in order to stabilize things, but we're not going to see that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Chief, thanks so much. Can I just ask, what is the hourly rate for call firefighters?
All firefighters, so it's based on a bunch of things. I would go up to $18 an hour base.
That's the base or the max?
That's base.
Base, okay.
And then based on certifications and rank, I think, and seniority, the top would be a deputy chief who'd be making about $30 an hour.
And they're really only paid when they're called, they don't get any stipend or salary. for being on
So
call.
that they do a little bit overnight. If they're, but that's only when they're committed to being on call. So we have 2 people committed to being on call overnight,
I see.
and they get a small stipend for that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
But anybody that comes in is still a 1 hour minimum. So if you're a entry level firefighter, $18 an hour, you get out of bed in the middle of the night, you get, and it's a quick call, you get $18 and that's it. There's no 2 hour minimum, 4 hour minimum or anything like that. It's literally 1 hour minimum for everything, training calls.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just, do you have hotbeds for your EMS incidents, like, places within the town? A lot of our 7,500 residents, are there places that you tend to go more often than others?
Yeah, so they're obviously associated with the more densely populated areas of town, and then any senior housing is, I could actually, our software will print out actually a heat map of that sort of just by color gradients can show you where our most frequent call areas are, and I can filter that by fire calls or EMS calls, so I could provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
We took it real easy on you.
Okay, thank
Where are
you.
you going?
Pennsylvania.
Oh,
Thank you. If you have anything else, just let me know and I'm prepared with it tomorrow night.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So let's talk a little bit about process. It's 8 o'clock. Some of us were here last night until 8:30. And we'll be here tomorrow night. So if we don't get through all the special articles, we'll continue those tomorrow night. So we'll see how far we go on this. Huh? You want to go to that? You got a supply pizza? Let's start with the easy ones, or not suggesting anyone should have questions, but emergency management. It's already, I'm sorry, I could have actually taken you if I thought about it and you went ahead and say it.
Well, I'm back.
Yes.
Chief, do you mind if I lead with this?
Sure thing.
Okay, I just don't think it's fair for an employee to defend their own salary here, so I wanted to just jump in and mention that I'm supporting a study and putting the END position this year, for the additional responsibilities that come along with that role. So,
What's the EMD?
Emergency Management Director.
Which is,
Chief, do you want to elaborate on that, the roles and responsibilities?
Sure thing. Yeah, the emergency management director it's like a managerial function for creating a framework within the community to try to reverse or address vulnerabilities, hazards, and to cope with any type of disasters. It's to make sure the community is prepared to handle any type of events. Could be weather, could be an event that took place, all sorts of could be a major fire, it could be an incident, all sorts of incidents that you can to be planned and prepared to have a plan in place to make sure that we have the relationships in the infrastructure to handle any type of situation, like involving a rail train or hazardous material. It could be all sorts of things, a variety of different things. And so it's really just a position to make sure that everybody's trained in place, has a good idea of what their role is going to be. It's requires a lot of meeting, a lot of planning, a lot of policy maintenance, and being on call 24/7. You have to, we can't predict when these events are going to take place. So it's, you have to be there. You have to be ready to respond, ready to put that action in place instantly.
So is this Chief Story?
Yes.
Chief Story is our EMD and has been for some time. I'm just suggesting that this year we include a stipend to compensate him for that role.
And some of also is the messaging, get the message out to the vulnerable people in the community, know where they are, to make sure when there is something that help is there for them.
Any other questions on the emergency management? Thank you, Chief. You don't have any other departments that I'm gonna miss you on, do you? Animal control. Stay right here, Chief.
The animal control, I believe, is level funded. If anybody has any questions.
It's page 18.
Yeah, we spend more than 5 minutes on animal control. We really need one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Okay. Community services, page 21 of section 6.
I can take this one, so real quickly, I'm proposing a decrease of $10,000 this year for 2 reasons. First reason is that it was necessary, we've heard me say this before, to trim this budget a bit throughout the process and make some difficult decisions. The second reason, and the most important reason, I think, is that there were and are other opportunities in town for many of the nonprofits that receive funding through this source to receive funding, and by that I mean through ARPA and our community impact funding. So last year, the $1.2 million in ARPA funding and the $350,000 of community impact funding is about $1.5 million. So I'm comfortable with reducing this. If you are, but of course it's your fault.
Do you have the list anywhere of where that money went?
Yeah, we can share that. It changes from year to year. It doesn't change a heck of a lot from year to year. It's usually the same people, but 2 or 3 change. Someone might not apply 1 year and someone else will.
So let's do that.
Yeah, I can start that.
Yeah, I guess I find myself also wondering, is this again a place where some of the community impact funding from cannabis revenue can go and offset the budget? Or is that?
Well, it could perhaps, but we don't.
You don't know what it's
at
gonna
this
be,
point what the
yeah.
applications will look like.
Oh, I see.
It's hard to say
So-
if they'll fit into those categories.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to see who's the EMT,
Kinds of organizations.
the ambulance squad is in this. Did they get?
No, these are non-profit stuff.
They're not.
No, it's.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
the
Fairfield
traditional
Street, Vim, a lot of the local organizations we work with on a regular basis. And these are small grants, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000.
Yeah, right.
Criminal justice, also their railroad agencies.
And this number generally fluctuates. I mentioned it, I think, somewhere in here, it fluctuates anywhere from about 20,000 to 40,000 every year.
Okay, page 26, boards and committees.
This is also, you said 26?
Yes.
This is also mine. So we were able to fully fund most of the requests that we received this year, but I did scale back the requests from the Du Bois Committee and the Transportation Advisory Committee. So the 32% increase is really just due, I know it looks like a significant jump, but we're talking about $5,000 here. It's due mostly to the fact that last year we did not receive a request from the Du Bois Committee and instead increased grant and aid by $5,000. And encourage them to apply for funding through that program instead. So this year, I'm suggesting that we included $5,000. You can see they did request 20. Again, It's so difficult, decisions had to be made, and I trimmed that down to 5.
But am I understanding correctly that there are other sources of money that they can apply for?
Sure.
That's correct.
Right.
The Du Bois Committee can apply for, you mean? Because they could apply for some of the community of the whatever it's called, the one with this.
They applied for the cultural,
Yeah.
cultural grants and, yeah, they do, yeah. they-
I mean, I think it's, I think you know that in the past, I've worked with the transportation committee on some of their sort of a survey and work in terms of looking at transportation. And I guess, I just want to say, I mean, I know that they asked for some additional funds to look into improving transportation. And I, as someone who, teaches at Simon's Rock, and I know our students are always struggling with transportation, I think transportation is a big issue in this region, and I do think it'd be important to sort of try to improve public transportation.
We're about to launch our micro transit program, and we're investing a significant amount of grant funding into that program.
Oh, so this might be taken up with some grant funding, is that correct? The extra, the funds,
I'm sorry, you lost
so
me.
they have
This is the
to
position.
1,500, and is that so?
Yeah, this is actually related to the transportation advisory. It's just
It's the
some funding.
commission, that's not the project, actually.
Yeah, it's not related to any project or actual transportation, it's just covering costs associated with the board or committee. So perhaps a training or food for a training or something along those lines.
Okay, that's my understanding. All right, it's Kate on the line, no?
Yeah, yes,
Oh,
Kate, very quickly. It's late and I get grouchy.
you can always start.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that this additional $500 was specifically requested for advertising for various, transportation initiatives, surveys that we have throughout the year, especially, and we think this is important right now, as we are launching the micro transit program. As a committee, we are hoping to monitor and, understand the effectiveness of this program. And, in reaching out to the community, it's a very small amount of funding that we're requesting in the overall budget. I do believe an additional $500 just to help us with assessing, the impact on the community through a community survey that will be held in the next fiscal. Thank you.
Okay, what's the micro transit budget?
The micro transit budget is significantly larger, but most, if not all of it, is for operating.
Okay, how much is a micro transit budget?
About 180,000.
And you're gonna argue over 500?
Well, we're requesting.
We'll take 500 out of your micro transit and put it into this.
Okay, well, it's different funding buckets, but okay.
Okay. Sorry.
You do get that.
Where is the micro transit?
What?
Where is the micro transit?
That is a separate, that's separate outside of our budget.
It's
Typically grant funding.
grant
Yeah.
funds.
Oh, transit.
Yeah, it's over 180,000 in grant funding.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not saying the 500 isn't important, but we need the rest of the story. It's $180,000 budget.
Right.
They should be a 500 in that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not keeping any more. Moving ahead. Celebration events, page 27 under section 6.
So this is up by $1,500 or 10% from last year, and I'm proposing that we increase this line to $9,000. So adding $1,500 to the celebrations line from last year. No change in the stipend noted above. This line, as you may or may not recall, was $10,000 several years ago, and when I made some difficult cuts, I trimmed it back. I'm looking to boost it back up a bit this year for two reasons. One, the Du Bois banners are nearing the end of their life and need to be replaced. And I also have a request to purchase some flags similar to what we have downtown here in the summer months to place in the village for this time. So I think that should be sufficient funding to do that.
So there are no real events in this budget, this is just basically what you need for the town.
So the
Flags.
celebrations account,
Yeah.
doesn't just cover banners, that is a portion of it,
Portion.
installing and.
But do you have any events in this, or this is?
Yeah,
Oh, you do,
this
okay.
is used to fund programs that happen throughout the year. Sometimes the band program here at the bandstand, we do contribute some funding to the fireworks for the.
Oh,
holiday
oh,
stroll
okay.
every year, so it's kind of used.
They're different, way. Okay.
Sometimes we donate money, or we have at least in the past year or two to Berkshire Busk to help their efforts
Mhm.
for entertainment downtown. So it's the account we use for all of these
Oh, different things, yeah.
various town
Okay.
celebrations.
Is there, when you're speaking of flags, et cetera, there've been some towns where they show, they have pictures of, I have young men, service people.
Mm.
We have a budget for that, can we do that? Pretty nice. I mean, along like with the flag.
We could certainly look into that. I haven't priced that out or researched that in any way, but we could certainly look into that and see what it would cost.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start on special articles. Some of these are more complicated than others. Let's see how far we can get on them. It's under tab 9. So let's start, Mark, you just go down.
Yeah, I can look through these really quick.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are terribly
No,
complicated.
and we've touched on some of them already. So
Right, exactly.
So I'll move a pace, just stop me if I'm going too fast, you have a question. First one here, community impact funding. This funds various programs that address the negative impacts of the cannabis industry on our community, specifically our youth prevention efforts. And the committee, the Community Impact Funding Committee requested some additional funds this year. So this is up from $350,000 last year to $500,000 this year.
What do we have available?
4
Yeah, well, what we're trying to do is to make this last, because this funding is not gonna, the revenue from this is not probably gonna continue. So we'd like to make this last over a good number of years.
So the
Yes,
current,
Richard.
the current balance is in your budget book. Right now, it's $4.5 million.
We did ask for that, I think, but we wanted that in fact.
Right, well, we're trying to make this last.
Mm,
I
yeah.
know.
Yeah,
So I did suggest increasing it to 500 from 350, but of course, again,
it's our
this
choice.
is your call.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 2, Berkshire Hills Regional School District vocational tuition and transportation. This assumes, again, I think I touched on this in my presentation, this assumes 2 students will enroll and require transportation. Last year, we had 4 students enroll and had to, at the last minute, ask for additional funding just before town meeting. It ended up, we only had 1 student end up enrolling and actually attending, and that student drove themselves. So that additional funding that you approved last year will just roll to free cash. This year, we're trying to get out ahead of it to the extent we can. It's too early for us to know how many students will enroll, but we're planning for 2. So we're not far off guard.
Can I just ask, could we be caught off guard before?
Absolutely.
So is this adequate? But I guess
We've
I'm.
never had 4. so-
Never had 4, but this is we just doubled what
No,
we
I
have, but
I'm a little nervous, because if it turns out it's 4,
Well, we would come to the finance committee,
it would wipe out.
or there's a chance we would know how many students enrolled before town meeting.
Before town-
We had a little advantage last year because town meeting was in June. and
Right,
before,
right,
so we
yeah.
had a little extra room. We're not gonna have that this year, but we may know a little bit more between now and May 1st.
I mean, it would wipe out our entire reserve fund.
Right, and the other part of this is, we may be lucky this year. We are gonna be lucky, we're gonna have a special town meeting probably in September for the regional school district planning board. We could put a warrant article on that.
Okay, okay.
So every year we can't plan on that, but you're right.
At this point, we're always just guessing.
Oh, I know. I just-
Timing of this is not, doesn't match up. Yeah, doesn't match up at all, and you're right.
I'm gonna combine number 3 and 4, stabilization and capital stabilization. This proposes a 50% increase over prior years, and tab 10 in your budget books, if you're interested, have all the fund balances right there for you, if you'd like to see those. Number 5 is our OPEB trust, and I did touch on this the other night as well. We're proposing to repurpose a 1986 account titled Unfunded Pension Liability Trust. Currently has a balance of $820,000 in it. And we'd like to add $176,500 this year and create and fund an OPEB trust with a $1 million starting balance.
So just to clarify, so we had no idea about this money before, and all of this talk, or did?
I had no idea about it. Our accountant knew this.
But all our kind of anxiousness and concern over the years, when I was like on the finance committee, this is always there.
This was there since.
That's like huge.
It's huge.
I mean, I know we've already said that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
This was brought to.
When, I'm sorry, I'll move on. When do you think you'll know, or do you already know that you can repurpose the money?
So I had an initial conversation with David, our attorney. I sent him the article from 1986. He reviewed it and mentioned after a quick review that nothing seemed out of line, no red flags. He needs to spend a little more time researching this, but right now it looks like we are good to go, assuming that the finance committee and select board approve this. So I have to check back with him and see if anything is changed. Right now,
Can you share with anyone who's interested that document that David is reviewing?
Yeah, yes, I can. In fact, I have it right here in front of me. It's the warrant from 1986. I'll just send you the one page that the article is on.
Thank you. Got
that. Moving on, I'm gonna skip over 6 since we covered that. Number 7 is Housatonic Water Works relief. So as of right now, the economic development earmark language that included $100,000 for Housatonic Water Works relief has been amended by the House to include $150,000 portion that was dedicated to shuttle funding for a total of $250,000. It's off to the Senate now. So I would suggest supporting this request of $150,000 for now until we know a little bit more. Just for flexibility.
Can you repeat that, please, about the shuttle?
So the economic development earmarks $100,000 for Housatonic Water and $150,000 for the shuttle. The House has approved an amended budget that would combine those two and provide $250,000 of funding for Housatonic Water Works relief. It's now off to the Senate for review and approval. So my concern when I added this 150 in here was that the $100,000 alone, if that's all we have to work with, doesn't amount to much when we divide it by 824 service connections. So of course, $250,000 would be much more impactful. I think we could do a heck of a lot more with it. So that's why I'm suggesting that we keep this in there. If we do hear that the Senate approves it, perhaps you can reconsider removing it at that time.
Can I ask you something?
Sheriff Evans, just go ahead, you have something? Sheriff, just unmute yourself. Okay. Go ahead.
Mark, the relief would be provided to everybody, right, who is a customer of the company, regardless of what the situation is. So it's just gonna go to everyone.
That's something we have to talk about.
Oh, okay. That hasn't been decided yet. Okay.
What I imagine happening is the staff will put together an executive summary, we'll bring it before the board.
I see, so it hasn't been decided. Okay.
I guess I'm just not clear where the 150 is coming from, because there's $100,000 and then there's another 150. So is this the 150 that was for the transportation, or is this the
This is
100 plus an
this is
additional?
This is an additional $150.
In case the 150 wasn't repurposed. Or we could decide that we want to do this too.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
Shep, you're unmuted, try again.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Shep. Okay, let's move
I have a
ahead.
question.
Yeah, go ahead, okay.
All right, this money that was, repurposed for Lieutenant Water, was this, I'm not trying to get any credit, I just want to know if this is what we did when you said, at first we said we could not. And now it seems that we can, so this money has been.
No, let me try to explain, let me give it one more time. So, we never said it couldn't, it has to go through the House and Senate, so right now the House has approved repurposing the 150.
Well, we said we couldn't rewrite it.
Well, we can't, but they can. And then it's in the
Yeah.
Senate now. If the 150, if let's say the Senate doesn't pass it. There's still, we have 150 that's coming from free cash here. If the Senate passes it and we have a total of 250. The 100, the original 100, and then the 150. Then that would give us 250. The Senate and House passes it, governor signs it, we'll have 250. Then it's our decision. Collective we, whether the 250 is sufficient. And we'll drop this 150, or we want to go to $400,000, sorry, it's late. Almost had to get a calculator off of that one. So right now, this is kind of a standby in case that 150 fails. But right now, it looks pretty good.
Okay, now, I have to ask this, is this something that just occurred? Because, I've been arguing for repurposing the money, rewriting.
All of us have been arguing for that.
Well, okay.
This Select-Board. So
Well,
Mark announced it yesterday.
Okay.
So it's,
So I guess my question is this something that could have been done a while ago?
no,
Is it?
no, this has to go through, this is politics, it has to go through the House, has to go through the Senate, and the governor has to sign it.
I got that.
Well, so it couldn't be done a while ago, because everything takes time.
The process started after that original meeting we had discussing it.
Yeah.
And now it's just starting to move along.
Yes, it's moving at a snail's pace, but it's moving, and we should be thankful for that. And we really didn't expect the money to be even paid to us for 8 weeks. 16 weeks, so we haven't fallen that far behind anyways. Because it takes that long to allocate.
And we haven't even.
Well, why didn't the Senate do this, right, this, or repurpose it before, why didn't they do it so now?
They probably have other things to do. I mean, we're not the only thing angry. I'm not.
Because I wanna know, because I've been bugging about this for the longest time.
We-
I don't know why it hasn't happened. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anybody else.
What I'm saying is we've all felt the same way.
I haven't heard anybody say it but myself.
We've all said it, but the problem is it just, to repurpose money is a political request and it's taken time. It just takes that time. Now we have a new governor. So all that, just like our budget, the governor's budget is behind because it's a new governor. Everything just takes time.
I know red tape, I get
Yeah,
that.
that's what it is.
I think we dragging our feet, if something happened, it feels like to me, that this should have been, because we've been discussing it, I don't know other questions.
Yeah, well, we did everything we could. I mean, you can say we dragged our feet on a lot of things and blame any of us, but this time it's not our fault.
The request letter went to, our legislative representatives within 48 hours of the board voting. So it just takes some time.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
All good intentions just takes time. I agree with you. It would be nice if things happen quicker, but they haven't.
So we can circle back to this, we have 2 more meetings, of course, and if I have any updates on that funding to share with you between now and the public hearing, I will. So moving on to cemetery study and maintenance, number 8 on the list. This is a public works proposal to fund a comprehensive cemetery study, and I just want to note that this is not, this is, we're not asking for, to raise and appropriate funds here. This is only a transfer of funds from the sale of cemetery lots account. So we just need our legislative body to approve it. Moving on to number 9, unemployment trust. Ally's gonna take this one.
So the unemployment trust is an account that we have basically to pay for unemployment fees. We're fortunate that we have not really had any unemployment fees in all of FY '23 and in a portion of FY '22. So we've basically just been earning interest. Prior to that, from FY '17 through FY '20, part of '22, we did have expenditures, but we were earning interest on these funds. So essentially, we started with an appropriation of about 55,000 in FY '18, and we went up and down based on interest, earnings, and expenses. And now we're at a balance of 2,876.34. So the purpose of this appropriation would be to increase that reserve to be about 22,876.34. And again, that's based on interest through January 31st. So just to replenish funds that have been dwindling over the years.
Now, are these to be used to pay a portion of the unemployment benefits to a town staff member that's let go? Is that about right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Is this normal that towns put money into a fund to cover this? I mean, it's not part of our regular budgeting?
It is it's a requirement. for us.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
It's just that you haven't seen it for so long
Yeah,
because
no.
there was this lump of sum just sitting there and being used.
Okay, it's not, yeah.
We have the reverse problem. We can't hire fast.
We can find people, yeah.
Okay.
Moving on to number 10, Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is a request for $175,000 of funding to replenish the Affordable Housing Trust account. This would allow for them to continue funding or assisting with funding projects and creating new housing throughout the town. I think they're down, their account has also dwindled because they've been funding numerous.
And how big is that balance right now? What is in
I
that
think
fund?
they're down to $100,000.
Oh,
at
that's
this
it.
point. Maybe less.
Oh, really? Oh,
I don't know about that.
We can get you that.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Fred or Garfield may have it off the top of their head.
Chris just ran a sheet for us. We have about 145,000 that's not income, but we budgeted about 90 of that between now and July. So while we haven't encumbered it, we do anticipate spending a portion of that between now and fiscal year.
I'm sorry, I'm not even sitting. Moving on to number 11, website upgrade. This is a recent, I did touch on this also. This is a recent high priority project for the select board, and it was originally proposed as a one-time non-recurring expense to overhaul and update our website, and that's why we have it listed here as a special article. However, we're happy to move it to the operating budget. The only thing I wanted to bring to your attention, and I'm sorry, I didn't think of this last time, Ally reminded me afterwards, the reason we put it here was because when you see the IT budget next year, it's gonna skew the percentages and numbers of that. This is just a one-time expense. We can certainly do that as long as you just remember next year that when it drops by 30, when that count drops.
But
by
you will need to
30,000.
spend on the website, you really need to spend like maybe every year, you should be spending actually every 6 months, to keep it up. So
we
definitely it's an operating expense,
We have the annual hosting costs built into our IT budget.
Right.
This is an overhaul.
No, I'm just talking about upgrading, making it can, yeah. Because I think the functionality is very minimal, and you can do much more with the website that.
We're hoping
Right,
to do
yeah,
this 30
yeah,
dollars.
We all agree with that.
Yeah.
So what is this paying for? Is this for hiring an agency or, because we do have the new IT staff line that's being proposed, correct?
This is.
But that's different skills.
Yeah,
Really, yeah.
This is to hire our current host, which is Civic Plus, to basically redesign our entire website and transfer all the information from our current website to the new website. So it's a process that we'll work with them on over a 3, 4, 6 month period of time, depending on how in depth we get. And then beyond that, it's just the annual cost of host that's built into our IT budget.
Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, have you, you mentioned Civic Plus, have you, it sounds like you made the decision to stick with the same vendor. Is that based on the view they would be much more efficient to do it with them as opposed to starting new with someone else?
I'll tell you my experience in working with 2 other communities. Civic Plus, which used to be called Virtual Towns and Schools. This is what they do, towns and schools. They know how we operate, and the process was incredibly smooth with them when I worked with them in Whately to do exactly this project. When I was in Richmond, I worked with another company, and I won't mention names, but it was very, very difficult and probably took twice as long as it needed to. So.
And I second that because I worked with a similar company in my community in Pittsfield.
Yeah, I would highly recommend continuing to use Civic Plus.
Are you gonna integrate to any backend processes you have here? I mean, are you gonna automate, make things available, payments online, stuff like that?
We
Are you
take
thinking
payments
about that?
online now.
Right, but I mean, making it more robust and more user friendly. I mean, is it in the big plan here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure we could.
Right, okay.
I'm not sure exactly what it looks like yet, but. The last item on here, another one we discussed quickly, at least, or briefly, legal fees associated with host community agreements. And I should say it's not just for host community agreements. It could be any cannabis related legal matters that we need to get advice from our town council on. So what we're proposing here is not to raise and appropriate $15,000, but transfer $15,000 from our portion of free cash that's reserved for cannabis impacts.
Is that just for the one that is coming up this year, or will that cover all of them?
Should cover
As they
all.
come?
I suspect, and of course I don't know yet, but I suspect that they will all look very similar. They all do now, and I think we're gonna,
So this will all.
this should cover.
Any questions on any of these?
A very procedural one. Is there a way just to make it clear that this is coming from that? Right now we have one number for free cash, even though 4.5 million we have our eye on for this. It just, if there's a way to make it clear that's where this is coming from. I know it does say it here, but even right under, so at town meeting, it's very clear to voters, free cash earmarked for.
Yeah, we can make it clear in the warrant and in the motion. As you know, DOR doesn't distinguish though, so.
Right. Or to even, yeah, just that, and then an explanation just for the total free cash number, just so everyone knows, since we're not allowed to make it a separate account. Thanks.
If anyone hasn't had an opportunity, there is a very detailed breakdown of our free cash with the cannabis impact funding portion of that broken out this year, which is something I know you were very interested in seeing last year.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Citizen speak time. We may have all listed most of the citizens. I see at least one is not getting there. Good. I see no citizen speak time. Media time. By unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.